So you have an extensive resume on the stage. In 1992, you played the title role in Jose Rivera's play Marisol. You made your Broadway debut in 1993, playing Frederica in The Summer House. A reviewer said of your portrayal of Odessa in Water by the Spoonful that you had the most complete and touching performance in the production, also saying hers is a splendid work amid a cluster of excellent performances. As mentioned previously, you wrote and directed
That's nice.
Well, you're right. You didn't, yeah.
you wrote and directed the play Love Junkies of Hell's Kitchen, and you have an audio theater production coming up, Romeo and Juliet. Is there a particular performance from the stage that stands out to you as like your proudest moment?
Yeah, and to be fair, in terms of those reviews, I think that my character had the most sort of heartbreaking kind of journey throughout the play, and I think that that probably affected those reviews.
Oh, don't no, you're
Um,
not giving yourself enough credit.
well, that's nice.
Anybody, I mean, if the wrong person did that the wrong way, it wouldn't have been as heartbreaking.
Hmm.
Thank you, thank you. Well, it would be Water by the Spoonful. I would say to date, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, that was, the character. I don't know how many people watching this know, that character of a haiku mom slash Odessa. But it's such a heartbreaking story. I mean, you know, spoilers for Water by the Spoonful. Water by the Spoonful for spoilers. Um, it turns out okay in the end, but it's just, I don't know. I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. It's just such a journey. Um, do you want me to tell you one thing that happens that could like lets you know like how heartbreaking it was?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, she has a moment where she, she's with her, adult son, and he brings up how she went to get high one day and she came back and her little 2-year-old baby had died because she went to get high. I mean, and that's the whole thing with the Water by the Spoonful. That's where that title comes from. Yeah. And to live that, twice a day, sometimes like, 8 or 9 times a week. But I was just like, you know what? I really want to do this justice. And so that would be, I guess, my proudest moment, just that play, I guess.
And listen,
Yeah.
I love I love staging, and you stating that brings me to my next question because I heard you mention earlier. You mentioned that for you, it's the pacing on the set of being on a film. I'm sorry, being on in a TV show. But when you're actually a soap opera, if you will, but when you're actually doing film, you mentioned how hey, we can go do the same thing a bunch of times. So let me ask you this: if you could only act in one medium for the rest of your career, would you choose stage or would you choose film?
Wow, that is such a great question. I hope that I don't know if my answer is going to be satisfactory though, just because okay, let me just answer the question and then I'll go into the details. I would say at this point I would choose film because I'm more about like what can I leave behind? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so that is really the one of the advantages to film. It's there forever, and then so for that reason, I'll say film. But with film is actually in a way harder for me because I don't know if you've noticed that I'm an animated person.
Okay.
So I have to like really dial it down. I almost have to, and then if you add on top of that certain types of characters, which is characters I never book, like you'll never see me be like a cop or I did play a cop once, but it's because I blew my head off and I did that well. So I got it. So, but something like law enforcement where someone has to be so chill and just like, that's brutal for me. It's tough. So in a way, I feel freer on stage because I don't have to worry about being smaller for the camera. I can just, and to be fair, there's no feeling like getting off stage and feeling like, oh my God, I just lived this other life. I just spent the hour and a half or whatever in this other world, this other life. And that can happen with film, but it's so out of order, the filming. And so each have its advantages, but I would say going forward now, I guess it would be film.
Leaving that legacy behind is always important.
Yeah, that's so true about living another life on stage, because it really, yeah, you can't really get that experience in film, like maybe moments, but a lot of the times you're talking to somebody that's not even there,
Mhm.
or yeah, with stage, everybody is in the scene from beginning to end of the story,
Feeding off that energy from
Yeah.
one another, and the crowd too. That's the biggest part for me, is like that crowd reacts like, oh no, they love me, they really love me.
You just
I
made me
just-
want to audition for some stage productions, because that sounds really.
I'm gonna get you out there, man. I'm gonna get you out there.
It's a great feeling. It's a great experience. Yeah.
And having that direct response from the audience too,
Mhm.
I could imagine, is very
Yes.
gratifying.
Although, depending on the night, because sometimes you're like, oh, this gets a laugh or whatever, and it's like silent. You're like, oh, darn it. I wish I was. Yeah.
With Love Junkies of Hell's Kitchen, the lead role of Chulo, that was actually partly inspired by your mom, right?
Yes. I did some stand up in LA, open mics only, right? And I went there and I started telling jokes that had to do with, like, my relationship with my mom, and it just fell flat, right? But what I realized was that when I sort of I did the act again, and I would imitate her and then play myself. So when I did it as a dialogue, it worked much better. So I started developing this character that was, somewhat of an imitation from her, of her. My mom was a bartender when I was little. That was one of the things she did. And so then I made Chula this really hip, cool kind of bartender. But what happened was that I was taking an improv class in Los Angeles, and I was thinking of writing something, just instead of just stand-up snippets, with this character, just actually going ahead and writing something. And I did the character for my improv class, and I had a huge crush on the teacher. And when I did the character, he was like, "You should write that. That character is awesome. Write something with that." And I was like, "You got it, Daddy." So I drove straight home after class, and I started writing Love Junkies. And that's how it just, wait, was that Love Junkies, or that might have been the first play, which also had Chula in it. So yeah.
I'm curious, after you wrote and directed and watched your vision come to life on the stage, was that ever tempting for you to carry those skills over to film and try writing and directing a film?
I wrote a short film, but it was so upsetting that, like, the topic of the film was so upsetting that I was like, I don't know that I want to pursue this. But I guess at this point I would love to direct. But in terms of writing, gosh, I don't, writing is very lonely.
Yes, writing,
Very
writing
lonely.
and post-production.
Oh yeah. So I'm less inclined to put myself through the writing process. I don't feel as compelled anymore. I was compelled for a while, and so I did write the 2 plays, but now I love, like, the whole concept of directing. So for sure, I'd love to direct a film. Yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. Let me ask you something. You started out by talking about writing, so clearly people have what I'm about to bring up. People have read it, they've watched it, and they've actually did plays on it. But this is going to be a unique take on it. Can you tell us about the recent audio theater production of Romeo and Juliet, and how something like this is accomplished? Because of course you're co-starring with Lupita Nyong'o, Wakanda Forever, Guillermo Diaz, Weeds, David Zayas, Dexter, and many others. So are you guys performing this together remotely? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we did it over Zoom. The public theater sent us a huge box of equipment. So we had professional mics and whatever else we needed to kind of attach to our computers to be able to record well. And then we would just get together and rehearse over Zoom. And then we rehearsed it first. And then it was like recording day, you know, and then that's when we would record our sections. Yeah.
It was really cool that was done bilingual too. Like it would just go jump back and forth between English and Spanish.
It's so that's why I think they're calling it Romeo y Julieta. I think the name is like actually like Spanish.
I noticed a Y in between Romeo and Juliet in the title. I didn't know what to do with that.
That title is in Fuego.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.